Now, what's also critical, if I'm not sure if we caught that, but I'm also saying that the benefits of intermittent fasting, or whatever we want to call it, time restricted feeding, are also overstated.
Probably.
Usually. Yep. Especially in the context of, I have this diet that we're calorie matched for or energy matched for, and then I have that same diet, but it's restricted to 8 hours of feeding. As far as what happens to blood cholesterol, weight, waist circumference, you name it, performance, we see generally the same outcomes. So I just think there's so many ways to unpack what we see in this direct poster and in this paper. Mm-hmm. And then also, how does it kind of reflect or show the opposite of what currently exists? And then what can we really make recommendations based upon this? But I think we've talked about fasting a little bit over the course of episodes over time. So this is a good one to revisit, because there are some people, based on their schedule, based on their preference, that a restricted window might work better, but it's not uniquely beneficial as something that just has a little more of a normally, every 6 to 8 hours or every 4 to 6 hour spacing of meals.
Sure.
Yeah. And along those lines, if you are overweight, obese, dealing with diabetes, and you use intermittent fasting to get a jump start on improving your health, I think that's a great idea. If that works for you, that's great. But overall, you can tell from the podcast, we're not super into fad diets, fad supplement, even across the board. We're not jumping on the next thing. So is there a chance that doing this long-term could be problematic? There's a chance. This doesn't prove it by any means, but there's a chance. Mm-hmm. But either way, I think, to go back to the beginning, if you're using it as a jump start, there is good short-term data. But are we ever in favor of massive fad long-term changes like this that you need? And this is the only way you eat is in these short windows. You could just be careful with it. But short-term, if it's something you want to try and it's working for you, I'd say go for it.
Yeah. Makes sense.
And there's even another, even like if we just want to keep riding this momentum.
Yeah, absolutely.
What's one reason why intermittent fasting became so popular, or why is it still so frequently talked about? Well, there are implications in terms of like our natural biological rhythms, our diurnal rhythms that if we just look at it in the context of, let's say, insulin sensitivity, that maybe somebody who does have an elevated hemoglobin A1C, or they're pre-diabetic or they're diabetic, that structuring the timing of eating might move the needle for that person more than somebody over here who doesn't have said issues. So there's something to, again, how insulin sensitivity changes throughout the day, let's say, for example, and for somebody who might have blood sugar dysregulation. And then you couple that with the idea of like, what's the alternative here? Well, how long should I space out these meals? Should I be continuously eating, or should I space them out? Should it be 16 hours versus 8 hours? Well, guess what? We know for sure that humans should not really be continuously eating or grazing. We know that's a source of many issues. It's much easier to put on weight that way. It is much more likely to see said blood sugar regulation in those populations. So some level of spacing. It's not that, like, by saying intermittent fasting is useless, that we just throw all chrononutrition or timing around eating out the window. It's just that there's so much more squish in between what can be beneficial, what can be practically used for somebody. And then also just that, just looking at the polar, I think it's helpful to also look at the polar extremes. Continuous eating all the time. If you're on a continuous IV, enteral sort of feeding versus somebody who's being, given food intermittently in the hospital or something, there can be massive differences in how health outcomes turn out, and blood sugar, impetus, and et cetera.
It seems, just applying some logic, that we are designed to eat and then stop eating.
Right.
And then eat and stop eating. And that's kind of the general pattern that should be happening. And that there's, if I hear what you're saying correctly, the gap in there can be different for different people.
Yes.
In different situations. And there are benefits and drawbacks to all of those. Mm-hmm. But at least as far as this paper is concerned, or this poster presentation, drawing some sort of broad-based conclusion that if you don't eat all of your meals at least 12 to 14 hours a day, space, in there, if you try and squish it down into a smaller amount, then you are going to die of heart disease.
Right.
That's just a massive overstatement.
It's more than a reach.
Yeah. And another angle here too is just the most fundamental level. I know for me, I did kind of a time window thing for a while, and it did help me lose weight.
Yeah.
But I find it hard to believe that the core of the benefit didn't come because I didn't eat ice cream at night. When do you eat ice cream at night? When do you overeat pretzels? When do you overeat chips? It's not typically while you're busy and working, and it's whenever you're kind of relaxed at night during the day. So I cut out so much junk eating, not necessarily because of anything intermittent fasting related to the way my body reacted to it. I just ate less junk because I was committed. Because yes, the framing and the context of intermittent fasting gave me a line to draw and that line, what was over that line happened to be the times when I ate worse than when it was inside of the line.
Right.
So some of it is pretty fundamental too, the general concept of it.
Well, like a general rule of, I'm going to stop eating at least 2 hours or 3 hours before I go to bed.
Mm-hmm.
That seems to be something that has worked for me personally I can't, if I start, because once I cross that line, it's hard to stop because I'm just going to keep eating until I go to bed.
Yeah, I know for me personally, it's very much just my mind state. I'm in a more relaxed, my work's done for the day. The kids are in bed, whatever it is, I'm more relaxed.
Access through the roof.
Access is through the roof too. Yeah. All those things kind of come together, And
I've been in the pharmacy. I know that there are sometimes some baked goods in the back.
I eat a little less lunch on those days, but yeah.